Hey everyone, it's Wolf614 here, back at it again with yet another video. This is race number 2 of the second season of our Bass Pro Shops Racing League. We are at the Michigan International Speedway for this one. We are racing every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for myself, and for others, that is when we're going. It is always on my Twitch, which is the top link in the description. YT is at Wolf614_ on Twitch there. And if you want to see in-depth stats on all the drivers, our wins, top 5s, top 10 stages, all the kind of stuff, we do have a spreadsheet that is linked below as well if you want to view that. But yeah, we're going to hop right on into this. Not a ton to cover. We'll go through the starting order and get right into the race. So it would be Cord, aka Batman, taking the pole, with Nick making his long-awaited return to the series, NASCAR and myself in row 2, with Tony and Gators in row 3, TR and Bacon in row 4, with Smoke and Ghost in row 5, and rounding out the field would be Timmy and It's AP in row 6. On the start here, we would get away pretty decently on the second row from the outside. NASCAR would try to make a move to the bottom. Nick would be trapped on the outside. The one time you don't want to be on the outside is on the starts or restarts at most of these tracks. And NASCAR would get to the bottom of Cord, who was lagging, along with Tony, who was lagging, which is lovely when we're trying to go 3 wide here. On the race start, Tony would get shuffled back a little bit. NASCAR would be pushing in on the bottom, and Cord would get the push from Nick up into the corner onto the preferred line. We would try and take the slide job all the way. NASCAR would slide up, and there would be a lot of contact in turn 1. The base setup here is way too tight, but Cord would clear off for the lead until lap 2, when we would, or onto lap 3, when Tony would make his way through, and we would try to slide it down the inside. Tony would get too tight, slide up in front of me, and that would cause me to lose most of the momentum and a bunch of spots in behind. That's Cord, Tony, NASCAR, and then Gators in the 9 car would start looking for a way around. However, he would back out of it, didn't want to be on the inside on the tight setup. Tony would then slide up and out of the way, which would leave me, NASCAR, and Cord in a race for the lead. NASCAR would make his move on lap number 5 to the bottom and try and slide up in front of Cord. I would stay pretty good on the 3rd lane from the bottom, get a good run. Cord would try and slide up in front of me. However, I didn't know where he was because he was lagging, and we would make the move on him with Tony pushing me through, and I would push NASCAR. I didn't want to make that move too early into the run, as I would get up almost into the wall and keep it out, get a really good run in off the corner, and Tony would stay latched to me to push me through to try and clear off into turn number 1. I would get up into the high groove and be able to hold that position and keep it off the corner. NASCAR wouldn't be able to get the good run off the exit, and we would have the lead until lap number 9, where Tony would give me a shot into the corner up to 199 and in a couple taps up, and I would slide up into the wall on corner exit, almost cause an accident. He would get by, Nick would get by, and NASCAR would get by for the moment, really causing me to lose a lot of time until at the end of lap 9 onto lap 10, I would get back to the outside of NASCAR, get a little draft of the 2 guys in front, and be able to run it fast around the outside of the track and be able to make the pass stick on the 24 car to put myself back up into 3rd. On lap 11, however, I would come down pit road. Hadn't practiced getting onto this pit road at all, so I took it very easy and gentle, way more than I probably needed to. I would get it slowed down there. On lap 20, basically, of 22, not much happened. NASCAR got out in front. Nick took 2 tires to keep himself way in the lead. Gators pitted super early, so he was trying to fuel save a little bit to keep his position. We would make the pass off of turn 4 or off of turn 2 here for 3rd place. However, I would not be able to catch NASCAR fan coming off in 3 and 4 here. I'd get up into the wall just a touch. He would maintain the 2nd position, as Nick would come through to take the stage 1 victory. So for this season, only the top 5 in stages get points. So it'd be Nick with the win, NASCAR in second, myself in third, Gators in fourth, and Tony rounding out the point scorers in stage 1. Stage 2 number 2 would get underway with one of the craziest restart sequences that I've seen in a while. It would be Nick with the lead on the inside with NASCAR on the outside trying to float down to the bottom. Gators would not allow it. I would try and hop up to the third lane because I didn't really have anywhere else to go with the push from Tony. However, that would send me backwards. Gators would get to the bottom. Its AP would get to the bottom. Bacon would almost swipe under me. Then Gators would get up into the wall. So I was back up to fourth for the moment with AP down there on the bottom in the one car. I would hop to the high line. However, try to cut underneath. AP would get into Tony, who would slow everybody down, including myself, as the entire pack engulfed us, especially me and Cord, as we would send ourselves straight to the back from it. On to lap 2 now, trying to figure out what was going on. I'm in 10th with Cord still lagging, of course, right there, as we would slide all over the racetrack. NASCAR would be back here as well. We'd go off the corner 4 wide, get into the wall there for Bacon and NASCAR. Gators would be going backwards now. We would make that move to the inside and find ourselves back up to 6, 4 spots gained in one set of corners. Timmy would be too low on the bottom, which would be another position for us. And then we would get the run off the exit of the corner on Ghost to put ourselves back up in 4th for the moment. Absolutely crazy scenes there. On to lap number 4 now. Bacon and Timmy working together on the bottom line, finding a way back through. Timmy wouldn't be able to make that line stick. However, Bacon would for the moment until he would get up into the wall. I would get back around him there. On to lap number 5. He would try it once again. This time would get up into me. Just a touch, which would send me up into the wall. And then a stack up behind would occur with Timmy, Bacon, and then Gators getting hung up too much with me to get around me for that 6th position. On to lap 6 now. I would get a great run down the front straightaway to get around a Bacon. Timmy would send it down into the 2nd lane from the bottom. That would be a easy pass there on Bacon, and then Timmy would be taken care of on the next corner. Now myself and Tony racing for 3rd as AP would wall the 54 car. Big time hit for Nick there, as that would send him back, and Tony would make the aggressive move, door banging me out of the way to make sure that I couldn't use Nick as a pick to get by into 2nd place. I would try running the bottom line, but it would not work, and I would decide to come down to pit the next time around. On to pit road now, and like I said, I hadn't practiced it enough and would come in far too quick and would get a black flag, which would essentially ruin my chance of getting those top 5 stage points for the run. Next lap there, on lap 13, I would come down with a couple other guys to serve my black flag. Now on lap 21, making a pass here on TR to try and get back up into the 10th position. I would swipe up to the top lane. He would stay on the middle, would try and slide up in front. It would not work. He would get up into the wall on corner exit, get into me a little bit, but would keep it going straight, as that would be for 10th position. We would then pit on lap 24 for 2 tires this time, much more gentle coming onto pit road, not wanting to get a speeding penalty. On lap 29, we would pass Ghost through the pit sequence to get up to 9th, and then 8th on NASCAR, and then 7th on Gators running out of fuel. We would come to the line at the end of the stage in 7th overall. It would be Nick once again picking up the stage win, with Tony again in 2nd, with AP in 3rd, Timmy in 4th, and Smoke rounding out the field for stage 2 and 5th.
I'd much rather have that happen on the first.
We now move on to stage number 3 of the contest here, and this one would get wild once again, just like the start of stage number 2. It would be a lot of cars under a blanket, not a lot of room to make passes. I would get to the bottom pretty quickly here and start trying to make moves, let everybody float themselves up the track. and just try to keep my nose clean. As you can see, it's AP is in the lead with Tony in second, Smoke up to third with Nick in fourth, and Timmy pushing his way up to fifth. I'd currently sit in sixth as I would drop it down the inside, almost get underneath Smoke, and then almost touch Smoke and get him up and loose. However, I would try to get up, but it would be Nick who would stay on the outside. Timmy would give me a huge push, however, to get me clear of the 8 car and keep me on level terms with the 54 as I would drive it in deep into the corner. However, I'd have to get way off the gas to not push up into the 1 car. He would almost slide it off the corner. I would send a little bit of a block on Cord there, just kind of coming up and hitting his nose. I would maintain fourth for the moment until lap 62, where I would work my way to third. Cord would shove me into P2 for the moment, and I would drop it way down the bottom, covering off the run from the 1 car. As he would slide up, but I would maintain second for the moment. However, off the corner, the 54 would get the run. The 47 would get the run as Bacon was making his claim to try and run top 5, and TR would come soaring through, but he would get up into the wall and slide further down the order once again. I would try to maintain our position on the middle lane. However, it would just be a conveyor belt of guys getting around me on the outside as I would fall from 5th to 6th and slide back in so I could start running people down. Bacon would slam into the wall and then get punched up there by Cord as he would slide down the track after getting up into the wall. I would get up almost into Cord a little bit there, but I would maintain the 5th position for the moment. However, it's AP and Nick would have a run it again, and I would get into the rear of Nick. That would allow NASCAR his way around for the position of 5th, and here would come Gators looking for 5th, and he would get it. For the time being, I would drop it way down the bottom once again, just getting away from all of the mess that was occurring around me. Nick would get around Gators, NASCAR would get up into the wall. That would send him falling 2 positions as I would drag race side by side with Nick into turn number 3 here on lap 64, trying to find my way through. It's AP would slide up into the wall again, causing another big stack up, which would allow me and Nick to have a run. Nick would go low, I would go high. Nick would take his run all the way to second and then drop back. Cord would find his way by. Gators now pushing me to the outside of Cord on lap number 67. He would then try to push Cord as Cord was sliding up into me. I had to get down to make sure that I wouldn't wreck him, or that I wouldn't get wrecked myself. I would have the run off the corner though, keep it off the wall, and we would door bang down the back straightaway side by side as Gators would decide to make it a 3-wide battle for the lead. I would hang it on the outside, drive it in really deep, and be able to make it stick off the corner exit. However, Cord would get a good run with Nick pushing him and would try to take the lead back from me, and he would for the moment. On lap 72 now, we had been maintaining this top 4 for a while. I would get down to the bottom of Cord here, way down to the bottom, and clear off for the lead, slide up just in front of the 11 as I would maintain this lead until lap 73, where I would make a big mistake. I'd drop way off the pace, kind of back up the car, and then I would slide down, but I would miss time the move and get into Cord. I would then be slow and then start to slide on the bottom as AP, who was also pitting, didn't realize it, and it would be up caution here, the first big caution of the day. And we would have a restart on lap 76 where I would restart just behind Cord on the bottom row. The front 4 would get good pushes by themselves and maintain their position for the moment. However, into turn 1 is where it would all go away. Cord would get up too high. I would be able to sneak down to the bottom. Gators would not get a good run on the outside. However, he would maintain 4th as he would get the draft from the 54 car in front. Here comes Smoke again on the outside, getting a big push from Bacon as they would all make moves to the outside of NASCAR and Tony. Smoke would try to sneak down underneath NASCAR. It would not work, and I would
Oh
find
shit.
myself there
Everybody's up
fighting
front.
once again
This is
for a
scary,
top
man.
five position.
Yo,
The
welcome
outside
back.
line is just a crazy
Alright,
conveyor
good.
belt, though, on restarts once we get up to speed, as it was a mess of three
I'm
wide
scared. I'm scared. Don't shit yourself.
in
Don't
the
shit
middle.
yourself.
Oh
I
shit.
would get shoved up a touch by the 84,
My
get
bad,
into the
84.
8 just a smidge with netcode,
84, don't.
and
On
try
outside, on
my
outside, on
best
outside.
to clear off.
Hold
It
on,
would be a
Gables.
lot of touch in there. Smoke would get up into the wall, and I would be able to finally drop down in
How
P4
wasn't Ghost
and let
messing
Tony
with me?
start to
Oh,
push
I thought he
myself
was pretty
through.
solid.
It'd be
Except for
Nick
the
in the
beginning.
lead once again. Gators trying a slide job move. On the bottom of Nick, he would get alongside but
Now
wouldn't be
you
able to
guessed.
clear, and then would not be able to get up behind him as I would
Yeah, you
follow
own
suit
it. I did
in
do that.
second place and
Oh
would try to
shit.
take the fight to the 54 car.
20 to go.
However, a little accordion effect here on lap 81 would cause a stack up and send Nick up into the wall. I would drive it way underneath everything to get out of the way.
I'm coming in.
However, that accordion stack up would cause an accident coming off of turn 2. You can see all the cars sliding behind us,
Oh, bro.
and that would
Oh,
be a caution once again. Right here on the move on lap 83, you can see us coming to the choose line here, and this is something I don't normally see, but this would end up being the race winning move by Gators. He would take his penalty, drop to the back of the field. However, he would have much more fuel than everybody else as we got going on lap 85. I would push Ghost to the lead. On the restart, I would push Ghost up to the front and then find myself racing for second place, entering turn number 1. Ghost would go high to try and block the runs from behind. However, it would not be the move. I would plant the car to the yellow line on the bottom and be able to almost come up and then clear Ghost just barely. I would hold this lead until lap 93, where
We gotta get
myself
5 laps
and
here.
Tony
No, I'm joking.
would come for our final pit stop, and everybody else would follow suit after. I would take 2 tires and try to come out and fast. TR would get up into the wall there. You can see hard, and then would make a big block. I would be able to avoid it and keep the 5th position for the time being. Coming on to lap number 97 now, we are pushing up into NASCAR here, as he had taken no tires and only gas. It was setting up for a good finish between all of us until I would get up into the wall there, lose all the momentum, and drop to 5th position. NASCAR then would get a little lovely bit of netcode collision that would send him up into the wall and tumbling down. And now on lap 100, Nick would make the big slide job move on me to shove me down to 5th. I would try the cutback, but would eventually get locked on the bottom. Unfortunate for myself, as on old tires, the bottom just is not useful at all. Tony would make the move on Smoke for the time being. Smoke would try to cut underneath. I would take a big slide job run, but it would not matter, as both Nick and Tony got around Smoke. However, I would not, and be relegated to 5th. So it'd be Gators running the field strategy correctly that would get him the win, with Tony and Nick in 2nd and 3rd, Smoke with a good field play in 4th, myself in 5th, NASCAR 6th, Cord 7th, AP in 8th, Timmy 9th, Bacon 10th, TR 11th. So that would conclude our race at Michigan. You can see on the point standings, it would be 95, aka Tony, holding the comfortable points lead, 21 points ahead of myself and 23 in front of Timmy. You can see the field very closely spread. Gators up to 4th after his big win. And right on the cut line, Bacon and TR very close. Ghost and Nick further down the pack. Nick will make up plenty of time, however, with how good he is. But that's going to be all for this one. If you did enjoy this, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Go follow me on Twitch, check out the stat sheet, and until next time, take it easy.